The Untold History, a podcast by the Hispanic Council with the collaboration of the Spanish Ministry of Defense to get to know great Spanish figures in the history of the United States. Today, Juan Bautista de Anza. As a child, Juan Bautista de Anza never played at living surrounded by Apache Indians. He experienced the sensation firsthand, anticipating a century and a half before the premiere of The Great Train Robbery, considered the first Western in the history of cinema. Before Juan Bautista, his father had lived in danger, and before his father, his grandfather. The son and grandson of military men, Anza had no choice but to follow a career in arms. It is likely that he never wished for anything else. Our hero was born in 1736 in the Presidio of Fronteras in Sonora, Mexico. You heard that right. We said Presidio. Not that his father was an outlaw. He was, we insist, an honorable and brave officer in service to the crown. Presidio was the name given to the military fortresses that defended the thin line between the Spanish possessions in northern Mexico and the lands where the belligerent Indian tribes, such as the Pimas, the Siris, the Yumas, and of course the Apaches, camped. At the age of 18, Anza was already serving as a volunteer in the Presidio, where he was born and raised, that of Fronteras. And by 1774, with a proven track record in the fight against the Indians, he was captain of another Presidio, that of Tubac, also in Sonora. But Juan Bautista was one of those Spaniards who, never being satisfied with anything, aspired to be too much. That is why he requested permission from the Viceroy to practice a land route linking Sonora with Alta California. It was a matter of securing communications and trade, keeping the Indians in check, and dissuading the English and Russians who, from the east and north respectively, were advancing with the idea of settling on the Golden West Coast. In short, it was a matter of securing Spain's position in California, or the other way around, to secure California for Spain. With this goal in mind, Anza set out from Tubac on January 9, 1774, leading an expedition. The adventure did not come without its dangers, and he knew it. But what was the worst that could happen? To die at the hands of the Apache Indians? If that happened, Juan Bautista would suffer the same fate as his father, and he couldn't imagine a greater honor. The expedition covered nearly 1,000 kilometers of march, many of them pure desert, until reaching, on March 22nd, the mission of San Gabriel. With a select group of men, all from the Dragoon Corps, Anza continued on his way to Monterrey. The few Spaniards settled there, like those of San Gabriel, informed him of their main problem, the delay of supplies by sea, which increased their feeling of oblivion and abandonment. Anza's plan to open an overland communication route made perfect sense at that moment. Before the end of 1774, Anza was back in Tubac, safe and sound, with the satisfaction of duty accomplished. Success was rewarded with promotions and bonuses for him and his men, and the commissioning of a second mission, this one of colonizing character, unlike the first, which had been of prospective nature. The time had come to expand the network of missions and presidios throughout California, and to proceed with the exploitation of its many resources and riches. San Francisco Bay was a good place to start, and that's where Anza headed. On this occasion, the already lieutenant colonel of dragoons had more means than the previous time. We have already said that the purpose was to settle in the new territories. For this reason, the soldiers of the expedition were accompanied by their wives and children. In addition, several settlers with their families joined the expedition. In total, there were 235 people, of whom 207 were to stay in California. Once again, Anza had to guide the caravan in his charge through the desert, with the added advantage that he now knew where the scarce water wells were located. On January 4th, 1776, the lieutenant colonel and his dragoons entered San Gabriel, to the relief of its inhabitants. The Indians of the area were on the war path, and at any moment they could attack the position, reduce it to dust and ashes, and scalp the settlers. Anza and his men foreshadowed in a few years the saving role that history and, above all, cinema would have in store for the 7th Cavalry. Far from being satisfied with the role of reinforcement, Anza and his dragoons took part in the quelling of the Indian uprising without forgetting the objective that had brought them there: to found a mission and a presidio in the port of San Francisco. Anza carried out the orders received from the viceroy with a sense of duty that characterized him, and overcoming all difficulties, which were not few, including the governor's attempts to hinder them. On September 17, 1777, against all odds, the presidio was inaugurated, and on October 9th, the mission. By then, Anza had returned home, only to leave for Mexico City, where he was appointed governor of New Mexico. From his new post, he fought Indians who, from cowboy movies, are just as familiar to us as the Apaches, the Comanches. But it was not all battles. In Anza, a soldier and an explorer lived side by side. It was the latter who discovered a new land route, the one that linked Santa Fe with Sonora, town to which Anza returned in 1787, with the intention of taking possession as commander of the Tucson Presidio. But it couldn't be. Juan Bautista de Anza died in December of 1788. Perhaps struck by Indian arrows? That would have been expected after a life of riding through danger, but no. He died a natural death at his home in Arizpe. His vital adventure is thrilling, even more so if it's put into the context of a collective feat and a prodigious decade, the one that goes from the inauguration of Gaspar de Portola as governor of the Californias in 1767 to the settlement propitiated by Anza himself in San Francisco 10 years later. In that short period of time, Spain founded presidios and missions, explored vast stretches of land, practiced routes by ship and on foot, exploited the riches and resources of the region, and fought and, on occasion, subdued and evangelized the Indians. In short, it set out to conquer the far west, and it did so, once again, before anyone else.